logistics infrastructure and industrial capital are moving rapidly into Southeast Asia, seeking locations that can absorb manufacturing capacity at scale. In 2025, Cambodia captured over $10 billion in capital, distributed across more than 630 approved investment projects. That volume represents a record for the Council for the Development of Cambodia in its 30-year history. The World Bank's 2025 Be Ready survey reflects this influx of capital, ranking Cambodia first in ASEAN for financial services, ahead of legacy hubs like Singapore, Malaysia, and Vietnam. However, examining the structure of this jurisdiction reveals a clear paradox. High-tech assembly and complex manufacturing are scaling up inside a market that lacks deep domestic supporting industries. Developing economies historically attract heavy industry by first building robust local supply chains through basic textile operations. Cambodia bypasses this requirement. Its operational advantage relies entirely on its optimization as an isolated routing node, designed to process materials and ship them out, rather than deeply integrating with the local economy. This operates on a concept of total economic isolation. A manufacturing facility functions as an independent island, legally and physically detached from its surrounding environment. We call this the Stage 1 Enclave model. It is an economic strategy optimized exclusively for frictionless import, assembly, and export cycles, removing the friction of local market dependencies. Executing this model requires mastering three distinct structural layers: the Qualified Investment Project legal framework, the spatial infrastructure of private SEZs, and strict 2026 operational compliance protocols. Without perfectly aligning these three layers, foreign capital is exposed to standard tax liabilities and local regulatory friction. Aligning them correctly shields capital and maximizes return on investment. The first layer is legal. The Qualified Investment Project, or QIP, is the mandatory gateway status required to access Cambodia's fiscal incentives and structural guarantees. This timeline graph maps out the primary incentive under Option 1, a complete tax holiday lasting 3 to 9 years, depending on the industry. During this period, the project is fully exempt from corporate income tax, the monthly prepayment tax, and the minimum tax. Crucially, the expiration of this holiday does not trigger a cliff where standard tax rates immediately apply. Instead, the law mandates a progressive phase-in called the graduated tax on income. In years 1 and 2 following the holiday, the enterprise pays exactly 25% of the standard 20% corporate rate, resulting in an effective 5% tax on profit. In years 3 and 4, the liability escalates to 50% of the standard corporate rate. The final step reaches 75% in years 5 and 6. Only in year 7 does the operation assumes the fully normalized 20% tax liability. Alongside these tax schedules, the 2021 law guarantees 100% foreign ownership across almost all manufacturing sectors. There are no mandatory local joint venture requirements to establish a QIP. The framework also guarantees total capital mobility. Cambodia enforces zero exchange controls on repatriation. Investors can move capital across borders freely, subject only to a standard 14% withholding tax on non-resident dividends, which can be further reduced by double taxation agreements. By defining exact percentages over a decade-long horizon, the QIP framework provides foreign capital with a mathematically predictable runway, eliminating the ambiguity typically associated with emerging markets. The second layer is spatial. To optimize the tax advantages of a QIP, the physical movement of materials must be entirely frictionless. This is achieved by physically locating the QIP inside a privately managed Special Economic Zone, or SEZ. This split-screen diagram visualizes empirical data from the Asian Development Bank, comparing the operational behavior of firms inside an SEZ against those outside. The data shows that SEZ firms source only 12% of their inputs from the local Cambodian market. They rely almost exclusively on imported intermediate goods to build their products. Conversely, these same firms export over 70% of their finished goods directly out of the country. To facilitate this extreme import-export velocity, SEZs feature physical one-stop service centers. Customs officials and Ministry of Commerce representatives operate directly on the factory premises, clearing shipments on site. This lack of domestic integration is entirely deliberate. It isolates manufacturers from local supply chain inefficiencies and infrastructure gaps, prioritizing the speed of global export routing above all else. For established foreign operators already functioning inside Cambodia, the strategic imperatives for 2026 shift from initial entry toward expansion. Expanding a factory or upgrading technology creates an immediate fiscal risk. Standard capital expansions incur normal tax liabilities, unless they are structurally protected before the spending begins. This visual model illustrates the expanded QIP, or EQIP, mechanism. It is the primary legal tool designed specifically to shield expansion capital from standard taxation. Operators trigger EQIP eligibility when they expand existing production lines, diversify product categories, or install specific productivity-enhancing technologies. Securing EQIP status grants a new income tax exemption period. The duration of this new tax holiday exactly matches the time frame granted to the original activity group. However, the law applies a strict proportional rule. The new tax exemption covers only the specific expansion capital relative to the total project investment, not the entire historical operation. There is a rigid timing constraint. The EQIP application must be filed with the CDC and officially approved before any new capital expenditure is initiated. Existing operators must utilize this framework preemptively. Failing to secure EQIP status prior to an upgrade forces the new capital to be taxed at standard rates, eroding the competitive advantage of the operation. The final operational layer for 2026 is navigating heavy regulatory enforcement. Grace periods for recent legal overhauls have expired, shifting the environment to active auditing. The primary physical risk stems from aggressive on-the-ground enforcement of the 2019 construction law. Industrial facilities can no longer operate under the obsolete open and close permit system. They are now mandated to secure an occupancy open certificate. Maintaining this certificate requires rigorous third-party audits. Every 5 years, certified independent agencies must verify the structural integrity, fire systems, and mechanical, electrical, and plumbing compliance of the entire facility. Simultaneously, labor compliance faces intense scrutiny. The mandatory National Pension Fund structure, initiated in late 2022, is now fully active. Executives must audit their financial exposure regarding foreign workers. Because Cambodia currently lacks comprehensive cross-border pension agreements, calculating exemptions and liabilities for expatriate staff requires precise payroll engineering. Failing to institutionalize these protocols carries severe consequences. Non-compliance results in the suspension or complete voiding of QIP status, permanently stripping the operation of its tax shields and import duty exemptions. Integrating the legal, spatial, and compliance layers relies on a single administrative pathway. For new setups, the strategy begins by utilizing the CDC IPM portal to apply under the specific status of a company under formation. Applying as a company under formation bypasses duplicate bureaucratic steps. It allows the CDC to coordinate with other ministries to simultaneously issue the company registration, the tax identification number, and the QIP status. The law mandates a strict speed guarantee for this process. Once a complete application is submitted, the CDC must issue the final registration certificate within exactly 20 working days. Upon approval, the spatial directive is clear. Physically establish the operation inside a private SEZ to leverage on-site customs processing and guarantee frictionless export logistics. To guarantee the longevity of the operation, operators must automate their internal compliance systems to manage the mandatory 5-year occupancy audits, track pension liabilities, and file preemptive EQIP applications ahead of any new capital expenditure. Cambodia is not designed as a consumer market for foreign manufacturers to integrate with. It is engineered as a highly specific, legally shielded machine for global supply chain routing. By stacking the QIP legal shield, the physical isolation of an SEZ, and strict 2026 compliance protocols, capital is completely protected. This structural precision allows the Cambodian enclave to mathematically outperform its deeply integrated regional competitors.